labor is something that we are doing on daily basis. This is module 10, right? But still we are going to find many difficulties. Why? Because the things, they will keep changing, and the new information, it keeps coming in. Like, I will tell you about this NICE guideline, how often it has been changed in front of you. Like, it was changed in 2019 again, right? So these are the
Yes, yeah.
things. So but the point is that since we are taking exam of Royal College, so we have to trust on the RCUG resources like that. So we are going to do a NICE guideline on intrapartum care. As you know, it has two versions. First one is for the healthy women, and second one is for the women with medical disorders of pregnancy, right? Then preterm labor and birth. Preterm is not like something which belongs to fetal medicine. It is very much part of normal labor. Okay? Then induction of labor is equally important. You should know about all these things, that how we are going to induce, what are the substances, how do they exert their actions, and what are the indications for induction of labor, what are the contraindications, how you can minimize the risks, and what are the high risk groups. You should be able to identify them, and you know the stuff like that. Okay. Then birth after previous cesarean section, VBAC. So that is an interesting topic, and you must have seen that you are going to get questions mostly in the SBS, but you are going to get some questions in the EMQs also. Then we have to do abnormal presentation. We are talking about breech presentation all the time, so expect to answer 3 questions in the EMQs on breech presentation, okay, and their management. So that's a very high yield guideline. Everyone should do that very well. Then, group B streptococcal infection, I know that goes with fetal medicine, but still we need to do that because it is related to the labor. That's why we'll just touch on the important points.
Yeah.
Any other important area, magnesium sulfate. You know that we are using it for two things. We are using it for induction, for in the controlling this, for neuroprotection of the women if she's having PET, and then we are using it for the neuroprotection of PV if they are premature. So it has like specific guidelines and points that at which gestation age we should use, what are the indications, contraindications. After that, you should like this management of breech, external cephalic version, shoulder dystocia, and then assisted vaginal birth. Like instead of operative vaginal delivery, the new guideline was assisted vaginal birth. Then complications like cord prolapse and intrapartum hemorrhage, they all occur during labor. It's important to remember them. Then we should know about the preterm labor and birth, both the Green Top guideline and NICE guideline. Both are important. Then CDG interpretation and different scenarios. These are very important. Okay. Then one Green Top guideline like rupture of membranes from 24 weeks of gestation, like that. Then these are very high yield areas, and then we have to do certain topics from the top. I have taken out just the main points for you. Like analgesia we can do from there. Magnesium sulfate can also be done. Then use and abuse of oxytocin. Then pregnancy and spinal cord injury. They are always giving you some questions from here. No need to do the full chapter. Just a couple of relevant things which they are actually testing. ST analysis monitoring, they stand, they have been asking questions, just a couple of them, but you have to give very specific answer because we cannot make up things. These are very scientific things. Then among the scientific impact papers, we should know about the fetal scalp lactate, then induction in older mothers, and then threshold of viability. Okay, these topics they will pretty much cover the module on labor, like that. Okay. So these are important things, so we are going to talk about them. Most of the documents are present on your web page, and you have like 4 days to cover this labor. Why 4 days? Because very intense area, very intense information, but I'm going to give you very precise points. Okay. Now just the gist of the things, like the most relevant salient features of intrapartum care for healthy women and babies. Here you need to decide about the place of birth, like who is going to be a low risk, multiparous. So what is the ideal place for them? Even the home birth setting is good for them. Like if they are low risk, they are not having any medical disorder of pregnancy or something, then home birth is their, you know, best choice. And you know that many people like who are conservative, they like to have home delivery. That is the point. So then equal field comes across all groups. Then if the women they are belong to the low risk, then they can go to freestanding units, or they can go to the, if they have higher fetal risk for home birth, we will not allow them to go for home birth when they are primaries. Why? Because in the greatest place they observed was that the need to transfer to the hospital, like 4 per 1000 deliveries. Okay, I'm just giving you an
Yeah.
overview, and after that I'll just go back to the guideline. These are all SPAs. Then
Yes. Yeah.
then you should know that what is the main reason for transferring to the other unit or the hospital obstetric unit. The cause is, it's not always like fetal distress. This is mostly delay in labor in all locations. Second thing is that if the midwife decides that handheld device is not helpful and this one needs continuous electronic fetal monitoring, then they need to shift the person to the baby woman to the hospital. Then if there is any fetal heart abnormality which is picked up on sonicate, then of course we need to take them to the obstetric unit, like that. Then CTG, so what we can do, if the woman is coming, we will do the CTG for because these are all SPAs. The woman has come to you, what will you like to do? So you should do CTG for 20 minutes. That is the first thing. If it is normal, then woman is going to like intermittent auscultation, because that is the way in labor how you are going to monitor the woman through intermittent auscultation of the fetal heart. So you are doing the CTG. CTG is fine. Then you don't have to do continuous electronic fetal monitoring. You will start again intermittent auscultation if CTG is normal. Then you should know what is meconium. Meconium is like the passage of material which is coming from the gut of the baby, and it contains the desquamated cells, some mucus. And if it is coming out, it means that there is some degree of fetal compromise. Can be chronic hypoxia, can be acute hypoxia. That is one thing. Then care in labor should be 1-to-1 in all spontaneous labors. No electronic fetal heart monitoring. No antacids. But you can consider if the patient has taken opioids. Why? Because the opioids are there, the sphincters are relaxed, so patient can just inhale the substance. And if the, this acidic mixture mucus can be in the stomach, or maybe she took something before coming here, so now she can have regurgitation, she can have vomiting. So we are giving them antacid as a prophylaxis against all of these things, like that. Okay, but still the risk of having this aspiration pneumonia, it will not decrease. That is the reason. After that, so we have what type of pain relief should be given. We will talk about it. Different methods can be given. The things which should not be given, these are like, as you know, that we should not give these things: water perfumes, acupuncture, pressure, hypnosis, transcutaneous electric nerve stimulation, if it has been established, like that. Okay. Otherwise, we don't have to give it. So these are the things which are not recommended. Okay. Sometimes the patients, they want to have water immersion. So water immersion means that they want to stay in the water. So we need to tell the patient that they can have some complications. They can have some. Okay. The benefit is that since they are supported, there is no action of gravity. All pelvic ligaments and the structures, they are supported, so your patient is not going to feel intense pain. That is the reason. Okay. So what should be the temperature of water? Maximum 37.5 degrees. And opioids, actually, they can be given in all birth settings. Even if they want to give in the home delivery, they can give it, because the midwife is going to stay with them, so it's not a concern. Okay. So opioids, they should be offered in all settings. And once we have given them opioid, we will tell them that they should not drink any water within 2 hours after injection. If the patient cannot tolerate pain, then we will tell them that now we need to shift them to the hospital. And what information you will give on the epidurals? You will say that it will provide more effective pain relief than opioids. Okay, and patient will not have any long-term backache because it doesn't cause anything, and it is not going to prolong first stage of labor, and it is going to increase the duration of second stage of labor, and it is going to increase the chance of instrumental delivery. And epidural, it can be given in the latent stage of labor also, like latent stage is from 0 to 4 centimeter of the labor. Okay, so this one, it can be given, epidurals, they can be cited even during the latent stage of labor. Like if patient cannot tolerate pain, then it can be established. So we don't have to wait that she will go into proper labor, active labor, and only then we will give it to her, because pain is one of the most unpleasant sensations, feelings. So we have to give them even in the first stage, even when it is latent. Then we have to tell them that for citing the epidural, nice guidance says we should not preload. You know what happens when we are giving epidurals? Giving epidurals means that their BP is going to drop by 10 millimeters of mercury, which can be significant. That's why every time we are citing epidural, we have to check the fetal heart rate and fetal heart rate monitoring, and even after the top-ups, we need to check the fetal heart. That's important. Okay. No preloading, and then now the new standard of care is that patients they like to have combined spinal and epidural analgesia. Here we are going to use bupivacaine and fentanyl. So BP should be checked every 5 minutes for the first 15 minutes and after insertion or 10 ml bolus. After insertion or whenever we are giving 10 ml bolus, then we are going to check the BP. So delay in the active second stage of the labor by 1 hour or longer unless the patient has urge to push. Okay. Then plan to birth within 4 hours from fully, regardless of parity. With the maximum duration is 4 hours. They decreased it again to 3 hours, but again brought it back to 4 hours. From full dilatation to the maximum duration to the delivery can be 4 hours. But usually we are not taking the patient to 4 hours. We have usually on ground we are deciding way before it, isn't it so?
Usually, if they have epidural, we give them 2 hours. If they don't have epidural, 1 hour. 1 hour for the head descent. 3 hours and then 4 hours with epidural.
4 hours with epidural. So that is the standard of care, like that. Okay. So then so continue until third stage completed. That is the thing. Okay. Anesthesia, we are going to continue till the patient has completed the third stage of labor, like that. That is the point. Okay. Then pre-labor rupture of the membranes at term. These are two confusing terms, like pre-labor rupture of membranes, that is PROM, and the second one is PPROM. PPROM means preterm pre-labor rupture of the membranes, right? This PROM, it is like at 37 weeks, but why we are saying pre-labor? Because patient is not into established labor, not even into latent labor. Then the risk of serious infection is just 1% as compared to the normal one where the membranes are intact. Then the risk of infection is ascending infection is 0.5%. But with the ruptured membranes, the risk of infection is doubled, so it is going to be 1%. But this 1% translates into hundreds of thousands of women worldwide, like that. Then 60%, they will labor within 24 hours when your patient has PROM. 60% are going to labor within 24 hours. If they don't go into labor, then you will have to offer induction of labor after 24 hours. Unless there is some immediate concern, like there is infection, patient is refusing any other intervention, then you can start straight away also. Even now for the HIV infection, you don't have to start straight away. You have to wait for 24 hours.
Even if, sorry,
Even
even if there is meconium,
no. Then
we wait.
you will have to
We'll
expedite.
start. Yeah.
These are exceptional circumstances. Like if there is meconium,
Yeah.
you'll have to intervene early. Okay. Then until labor, record temperature every 4 hours. If no induction of labor, then check fetal movements and fetal heart every 24 hours. See, even then we are not supposed to cite this CTG and run, okay? Because your patient is stable.
Yeah.
Then if your patient doesn't go into labor within 24 hours, then we have to deliver them. How we are going to deliver them? So maybe we will have to do the needful, like can we start the induction of labor? Or if the patient is not suitable for induction of labor, then we will have to go for elective cesarean section, and they will have to stay there like for 24 for like that 12 24 hours as their condition will be. Then how we can reduce the perineal trauma. These are the key concepts, right? So no perineal massage in the second stage, no lidocaine spray, and no routine episiotomy. Then hands on or hands off, both are okay, because they will ask you which technique is okay, hands on or hands off. You are going to say that both are okay like that. That is the thing, okay? So now the NICE guideline, that what does it tell us? The NICE one, okay? So this guideline was updated in 2019, like that, okay?
19. Yeah.
Yeah, so it says that where can women deliver? Like they can have like 4 birth locations: home, freestanding midwifery units, and alongside midwifery units, and then the obstetric units. Then the chances, what are the risks which are associated with them? So what are the complications? The risks. So in the multi-gravida, risk of babies, they have serious problem at home, just 3 out of 1,000. But for the primary, the risk increase. Before we said that 4 in 1,000, but the 2019 guideline says that it is 9 in 1,000. So 6 numbers higher than the multi-gravida. So that is that. So the risk is going higher by 3 times, because here the risk of transfer due to the baby problem is 3 in 1,000, and here it is in the primary, it has become 9 per 1,000. So it has increased 3 times. Then risk of baby having serious problems at hospital in the multi-gravida, that is 3%. 3 in 1,000, so 0.3%, like that. So that is one point. So then look at this one, that what is the chance of having the risk that baby will have serious problem at the hospital? 5. So here the question, 2 SBAs they can ask you that the primary is delivering at home, so what is the baby is going to be, what is the increased risk for the babies? That is 4 in 1,000. Why? Because if she will go into the hospital, still primaries are going to have more problems. This info is based on data, right?
Yeah.
So in the absence of any trial at home, she went to the hospital and she is delivering. The chance of having complications, serious complications, is 5 in 1,000. And if she plans to deliver at home, her risk will increase from 5 in 1,000 to 9 in 1,000. That is the thing, okay? So then what are the indications for hospital delivery? Like if the patient has cardinal disease, like in all conditions we are not shifting, there are specific criteria, right? So we are shifting them if they have any cardinal disease. By cardinal disease, I mean like they have been diagnosed to have some infection, some problem, like they have cardiac disease, hypertension, asthma, cystic fibrosis, hemoglobinopathy, sickle cell disease, and beta thalassemia. Then low platelet counts, like if the platelet count is less than 100,000. Diabetes, hypothyroidism, infections like GBS, Hep B, C, HIV, immunological disorders like SLE, renal disease, then neurological problems like epilepsy, liver disease, and then psychiatric disorders. Then there can be like other factors for the hospital delivery, like there can be previous complications like stillbirth, and then what is the incidence of stillbirth? 5 in 1,000 or 1 in 200. The last guideline said that it is almost 400, but since our RCOG lice report embraced that it is not 1 in 200. No, it is like 4 in 200. A firm study was published, but still the guideline has not been changed, so you are going to say it is still 1 in 200 unless the college changes. Okay. Then if the patient has eclampsia, previous cesarean, ruptured uterus history, then current pregnancy problems like the twins, placenta previa, abruption, anemia, hemoglobin is less than 8.5, high BMI that is more than 35. Below 30, they don't have any problem, but 35 or plus, then they have problem, they need to be shifted. Then oligopolyhydramnias, small for gestational age baby, previous surgery like myomectomy was done, especially in myomectomy when the uterine cavity was entered. So that is an indication for cesarean section. So if I ask you that what is the risk of ruptured uterus, what can you like to tell me? 0.2, 0.9.
1 in 200. Yeah.
0.2 to 0.9, that is the in 1000. That is one thing. Okay. Then what are the stages of labor? We know that stages are like patient will be in a latent labor. It means that she will have painful contractions, and cervical dilatation can be up to 4 centimeter. Then we are going to say that this is latent labor, up to 4 centimeter. Active labor, like first stage of labor, from 4 centimeter to fully dilated. Second stage from fully dilated till delivery of the baby. Third stage is from delivery of the baby to delivery of the placenta. So placenta after birth, that is also delivered, and that is third stage of the labor. Care in labor, just now I told you about the salient features: one-to-one care, effective pain control, what should be given, Entox with 50%, which contains 50% nitrogen and oxygen, 50% nitrogen, 50% oxygen. Then opiates they can use to shorten they can cause fetal short-term respiratory depression. Then women should not go into water within 2 hours after opiate injections. Regional anesthesia, just like I told you, epidural can increase the chance of instrumental delivery, but it will not increase the chance of cesarean section. Okay. Then the regional analgesia, it is not epidural, it can cause like hypotension, so the treatment is hydration. Okay, we are not going to give them epinephrine, we are just going to give them hydration. Then second stage with epidural is 4 hours regardless of the delay. So how we should monitor the baby during labor? Intermittent auscultation of the baby for 1 minute after each contraction in the first stage by Pinard Doppler sonic. Maternal pulse, we have to check the maternal pulse so that we should be sure that we are not taking the maternal pulse and we are actually taking the fetal heart rate. Okay? If there is abnormal intermittent auscultation, then we are going to do the CTG for 20 minutes, and if the CTG it comes normal, then we are going back to intermittent auscultation. And if at this point you find that there are on intermittent auscultation some abnormality is there, then obviously we need to offer CTG for 20 minutes only. And if there is no fetal heart sound heard, then we need to confirm it by ultrasound that the baby is alive or well. VE we are going to do every 4 hours. So VE and temperature of the patient we are going to check every 4 hours. There are certain indications for continuous CTG, like maternal pulse is over 120 on 2 Guyans. Temperature is 38 degrees centigrade once or 37.5 twice 1 hour apart. If the patient has sepsis, patient has abnormal pain like you are suspecting abruption, or significant meconium. If non-significant, then we can do like CTG. Okay. Then hypertension and there is proteinuria plus 2, then again you need to do continuous electronic monitoring. Then first stage delay, like till the dilatation, full dilatation. There is going any delay faced, then we are going to do the continuous electronic monitoring. Then contractions lasting more than 60 seconds, those will be hypertonic contractions. Okay. So if they are lasting longer than 60 seconds, we are going to say hypertonic contractions. And when there are more than 5 contractions in 10 minutes, we call it tachycystal, like that. Okay. So know the difference between them. Then offer telemetry like wireless CTG machine, because the patient will be mobile. That is, if they have in the unit, then it should be offered. Offer telemetry to any woman who needs continuous CTG during labor. Then a normal CTG, you know that we are going to look at 4 features, like what is the baseline rate, are there any acceleration. Now we don't focus on the accelerations according to the new guideline, because we don't know what exactly is that one. Then what is beat to beat variability, like how much the heartbeat is changing in 1 minute, like that. Okay? So it should change by at least 5 beats with every beat, like that. Then there should be no decelerations. Okay, we should be able to read the baseline, and we should be able to see some pattern like CTG. That is the point. Okay, so CTG, how are we going to assess? Dr. C. Bravado, you know, that is a very old mnemonic. And the American College of OB/GYN, they started using it in like 1960. Okay, and when others they found that it is useful, then they also started using it. So we are going to look at the baseline. We will look at the short-term variability, accelerations, decelerations, and response to stimuli. So what will be the stimuli? Uterine contractions, and then fetal movements, and then any other, like can be vibroacoustic, can be different types of stimuli like that. We can do the scalp stimulation if the head is low. Okay. Then CTG, there is a systematic approach to the CTG interpretation. We call it Dr. C. Bravado. So here,
Yeah.
DR means determined risk. C means contractions. So contractions should be less than 5 in 10 minutes. If she's contracting like more than 5 in 10 minutes, then we call it tachycystal. And if the contraction lasts longer than 60 seconds, then we say that this is hypertonus. Okay. So baseline rate is 110 to 160 beats. This is reassuring. Variability should be between 5 to 25 beats per minute. Accelerations, they're not significant, but they are a kind of reassuring feature. Decelerations, then overall assessment and plan. So we need to determine the risk. Here in the risk, what can you include? Maybe this woman is post-AIDS. Maybe this is IUGR. Maybe the woman is preterm. Maybe there is sepsis. So all high risk factors that we read about, they can be seen here like that. Okay. So then, so determine risk, assess the degree of the clinical risk in relation to the clinical outcome, and don't take decision on the CTG alone. That is going to be a wrong approach. We have to see the overall condition of the mother, how far she is, and baby doesn't have any, any rights. You have to give preference to the mother. Seems unethical, but everywhere it is said that you have to give priority to the mother, because she is your original patient. Once the baby is born, he will be a second individual, and he is going to have his own rights like that. If the woman says that she doesn't want to have any CTG, you are going to respect that, because it is her wish, but you are going to document in her notes. Then there are certain fetal risks where you will have to do continuous electronic fetal monitoring, like intrauterine growth restriction, oligohydramnios, preterm labor, multiple pregnancy, and breech presentation. Everywhere we need to check the fetal heart valve. So what are the maternal risk factors? Like mother had previous cesarean section, preeclampsia, prolonged pregnancy. Prolonged pregnancy means that the duration of pregnancy is more than 42 weeks. Prolonged rupture of membranes, which means that she broke her water more than 24 hours ago. Then antepartum hemorrhage, and then if he has any significant medical condition. Then we have to assess the case. Those things we need to assess on the fetal heart rate, but we have to assess the contractions also. whenever you are examining your patient, make it a point to do abdominal examination, abdominal palpation. Many a times the doctors, they have this tendency that they will just do the VE and they will move on. So abdominal examination is also very important. It is going to tell you what is the lie of the baby. Like, we are going to do different grips, bollic grips we can do, and we are going to see where is the head engaged, what is the lie of the baby, where is the back of the baby, all of these things, okay? And the fundal grip, you are going to do that what is the level. So whenever you think about contractions, of course you are going to palpate them, and then you are going to look at the tocometer also, like the tocograph, because the toco is also used with the CTG machine. They are actually in the same machine. What is the rate of
Yeah.
contractions? Duration of contractions, for how long they are staying there. Then are they coordinate or incoordinate? Then what is the baseline tone? Because ideally once the contraction is over, the uterus should relax. If uterus is continuously contracted, then you have to think about ruptured uterus. That is one. Okay. So baseline rate, normal range is 110 to 160 beats per minute. Baseline bradycardia, if the baseline rate is less than 110, and baseline tachycardia if the fetal heart rate is more than 160 beats per minute. So bradycardia means where you are going to more likely to see the bradycardia. If gestation is more than 20 to 42 weeks, there is cord compression, there is congenital heart malformation, or there are drugs like the benzodiazepines. Then if there is tachycardia means that the heart rate is more than 160, and there can be, if there is excessive fetal movement, even that is a bad sign. Then if there is maternal anxiety, gestation less than 32 weeks, maternal pyrexia, fetal infection, chronic hypoxia, all of these are going to cause tachycardia. I want you to remember these causes of brady and tachy very well. It's important for you, okay? Variability means that the presence of the normal fetal heart rate variability is one of the best indicators of the integration between the central nervous system and the heart of the baby. Because from where the heart is getting the messages from the central nervous system. Normal range is 5 to 25. That is the point, okay? And then like accelerations that increase of at least 15 beats above the baseline for at least 15 seconds. Associated with movement or stimulation, presence is the single best indicator of fetal well-being, and antenatal CTG should always contain accelerations to be considered normal. So how do we interpret if there are decelerations? It means that the fetal heart rate is going below the baseline rate. Okay, so it is going to mirror. This is the image of the contraction. So they are being mirrored here in the CTG. Fall of less than 60 beats from the baseline is associated almost exclusively with excellent fetal outcome. Fall of less than 60 beats. So we have no concerns. You will say that baby is going to be fine because the fetal heart rate didn't drop by more than 60 beats. Okay. Then these are true. If there are true early uniform decelerations, these are rare and benign, and thereby they are not significant. Early decelerations, right? Early decelerations, we know that early decelerations are occurring without any associated problem, anything, and the baby is fine, they are benign, they are physiological, okay? Then there can be variable deceleration. What do we mean by variable decelerations? Like they can occur anywhere, and they are not following any pattern, okay? They can occur with contraction, without contraction. The early one, we know that early contractions, they occur with the early contractions, decelerations, they are going to occur with the contraction. The peak of the early contraction and the early deceleration, they will be just, the tips will be matching, so no problem, okay? Variable,
Yeah.
they have no relationship with the uterine contraction like that. Then we can have like late decelerations. Late desalinations are pathognomic, so something is definitely wrong. They are associated with fetal compromise, most likely intrapartum or antecedent pre-existing hypoxia. But this is D cells, like you have seen 100 babies with D cells, only 50 will have problem. So it is significant. It is showing fetal compromise in 50 to 60% of the cases, like 100 patients with this type of CTG, but only 50 to 60 they will actually have some problem. Okay, here if I look at this one, this is the tip of the contraction. Okay, so contraction is going here. If there is early deceleration, it will occur at the same point. Neither of both are going to meet. Now, if it is late deceleration, it will not match with the peak of the contraction. It is not related to the contraction. It is occurring after the contraction. Okay, and then the fetal, once the contraction is over, it will return to baseline. Okay, so it is not hanging down to that point. It will just rise and it go back to the normal level. Normal for that baby, like that. Okay. So appropriate monitoring in an uncomplicated pregnancy, like for a woman who is healthy and she has had otherwise uncomplicated pregnancy, intermittent auscultation should be offered and recommended in labors to monitor fetal well-being. In the active stages of labor, intermittent auscultation, it should occur after a contraction for a minimum of 60 seconds and at least every 15 minutes in the first stage of labor and every 5 minutes in the second stage of labor. These are all, both are SBAs. Okay, in the first stage of
Yes.
labor every 15 minutes and in the second stage of labor every 5 minutes. That is it.
Like
Okay.
5 minutes.
So if we look at the normal baseline fetal heart rate is 110 to 160. Moderate bradycardia 100 to 109. Moderate tachycardia 161 to 180. These numbers are very important. Okay, and this one will become abnormal. It will become abnormal bradycardia if the fetal heart rate is less than 100 beats per minute, and it will become abnormal tachycardia if the fetal heart rate is more than 180 beats per minute. That is one thing. Okay, so here you can see,
Yes.
like this is okay. And whenever they are giving you whenever they give you any CTG in the exam, you have to look at the paper speed. Most of the papers, they are running at 1 ml 1 centimeter in 1 minute. Okay, sometimes like in the old machines you can find 2 centimeters running in 1 minute, like that. Okay, so then you should interpret it according to the rate. So most of them, they are going to record at 1 centimeter per minute. So this one is almost fine. It looks like less variability, but still it is good. So this is good baseline variation, like it is changing by a maximum like 5 beats. If it is changing less than by 5 beats per minute or more than 25 beats per minute, both are associated with poor outcomes, like that. Accelerations, we said that like rise in the rate of 15 beats for 15 seconds. That's the one. Okay, that's acceleration. So they are the only indicator that the baby is fine. Otherwise, they have no significance. Very important in the SBA, they are going to ask you that there are decelerations. First task will be to identify the deceleration. Then the second task will be to find the cause. If there are early decelerations, like they're occurring with like 80% of the decels, they are going to be early. Early decels, they are occurring with the head compression, they are physiological. Okay. Late decelerations, these are due to uteroplacental insufficiency, and variable decelerations which have no relationship with the pattern of the being contractions, we call them variables. They have no relation to contraction, so, and they can occur at any time. They can be variable in the shape also. They occur due to cord compression, and then they can occur if there is some central nervous system problem in the baby, like maybe there is some motor disorder, something is there, like that. Okay, so the early decel, here look at the decel, look at the contraction. This is the contraction, and then it is occurring at the same time. You see the decel here. Can you appreciate it? So contraction and
Yeah,
they both are in the same line. So these are early decelerations. Okay. the deceleration is early because it is occurring at the same time as the contraction is occurring. So the late decelerations, they are persisting after the contraction has finished. Okay, so deceleration is persisting after the contraction is over, like that. So these are late decelerations. So then, how we should classify the type of the CTG? The it can be of like 3 types. Okay, if you will go to the terminology, so it is going to be of like 3 different types, like that. Okay, like they can be normal, they can be suspicious, or they can be pathological. Be very specific about these actions. Okay,
Yeah.
because normal means that all 4 parameters are reassuring. Suspicious means one non-reassuring feature and other 3 are going to be reassuring features. Okay? Pathological means that 2 non-reassuring features or 1 abnormal feature. In our discussion of slightly like 2-3 minutes ago, we talked about the abnormal features, like that. Okay, so 2 non-reassuring features or 1 abnormal. So when you will say that this CTG is normal, and then what will be your management? So the NICE guideline has given one very nice table. So here it is. Like it will be normal, the management is based on interpretation of the CTG traces. Category normal. Here all features are reassuring. Management: continue CTG unless it was started because of the concern arising from the intermittent auscultation and there are no ongoing risk factors. If there are no risk factors, then we are going back to intermittent auscultation. If the risk factors are present, then we are going to continue this electronic fetal monitoring. The risk factors, both maternal and the fetal. Don't think about only maternal or only fetal. You have to consider both maternal and fetal. Talk to the woman and her birth companions about what is happening, because you don't want to raise anxiety at any time. CTG will be only suspicious when you are thinking that something is wrong. Okay, so there will be 1 non-reassuring feature and 2 reassuring features. Why I'm saying about 3? Because we are not considering the accelerations, because their significance nobody knows. So correct any underlying cause such as hypotension or uterine hyperstimulation. Perform a full set of observations, maternal observations. Start 1 or more of the conservative measures, like inform an obstetrician or a senior midwife. Then document a plan for reviewing the whole clinical picture and the CTG findings. Talk to the woman and her birth companions about what is going on and take her preferences into account. You know that you are making the birth plan at the time of booking, isn't it so? But then we have to tell
Yeah.
the patient that at any time, if they change their mind, we can oblige them. It is not like something like a holy book. They are very flexible, and patient can give consent or withdraw it at any point of time, totally free. Okay? So talk to her, tell her about her options. You have to, in every exam, you should say you are going to consider her wishes and you will give her full chance. That is the point. Okay. Now, what will be a pathological CTG? So it means there will be abnormal features, 1 abnormal feature or 2 non-reassuring features. Okay, can be either of them or can be all 3 together. So obtain a review by an obstetrician and a senior midwife. Exclude acute events, for example, cord prolapse, suspected placental abruption, or suspected uterine rupture. Correct any underlying causes such as hypotension or uterine hyperstimulation. Start 1 or more conservative measures. Talk to the woman and her birth companions about what is happening and take her preferences into account. If the CTG is still pathological after implementing these observations, conservative measures you have implemented, still there is a concern, then you should obtain a further review by an obstetrician and senior midwife. So the senior midwife and the obstetrician, they both are going to review the patient together. Offer digital fetal scalp stimulation and document the outcome, that we did this fetal scalp stimulation test and the heart rate will obviously increase or decrease. So what was the outcome? You need to mention that. If the CTG trace is still pathological after fetal scalp stimulation, then you have to consider fetal blood sampling and consider expediting the birth and take the woman's preferences into account. So whenever there is a problem, you are going to expedite the whole process, okay? Then there are certain situations where you will have to do urgent intervention. So acute tachycardia or a single prolonged deceleration for 3 minutes or more. So acute bradycardia or a single prolonged decel lasting like 3 minutes. So urgently seek obstetric help. If there has been an acute event, for example, cord prolapse, suspected placental abruption or suspected uterine rupture, expedite the birth. So what are you going to do in that case? Of course, you are going to take the patient to OR. If you cannot exclude the uterine rupture, then you cannot apply these forceps or anything. Okay, then start one or more conservative measures. What they can be: make preparation for an urgent birth, and then talk to the woman and her birth companions about what is happening and take her preferences into account. Expedite the birth if there is like acute bradycardia and it persists for 9 minutes. If the fetal heart rate recovers at any time up to 9 minutes, reassess any decision to expedite the birth in discussion with the woman. So you have to talk. If the bradycardia reverses within 9 minutes, you have to tell the woman that it has reversed. So
Yeah.
keep her on the same page. Involve her in decision making. Then a separate pattern can be sinusoidal rhythm. So it means a regular oscillation of the baseline long-term variability resembling a sine wave. This smooth undulating pattern lasting at least 10 minutes, it has a relatively fixed period of 3 to 5 cycles per minute and an amplitude of 5 to 15 beats above and below the baseline, and the baseline variability is absent. So this is the definition given by the American College of OB/GYN. You are going to see like relatively fixed periods of 3 to 5 cycles per minute and amplitude of 5 to 15 beats above and below the baseline. So it means undulated, that it is just like a string. Okay, so it is associated with severe chronic fetal anemia and severe hypoxia and acidosis. So both are bad news. Okay, so this is the sinusoidal pattern. You can see that as if the points are oscillating on a central line like that. Okay, so that is what we call sinusoidal rhythm. So then CTG, like we know that if they ask you, write down, if they ask you what is the false positive rate of CTG, your answer is 50%. So then when the CTG is so unpredictable and we cannot decide on the basis of CTG and we have to consider the overall clinical condition of the woman, then why do we do this CTG? Because CTG is very helpful in high risk cases. What are the high risk cases? Like I told you a while ago. So standardized evidence-based guidelines, they are being laid for the correct use and for the decision making and also for the record keeping. And important that what was the time for CTG? So time for CTG said that for how long we should keep the CTG record. If normal, then we need to keep for 25 years, and possibly we need to have it stored electronically, and a tracked system should be in place. Robust tracking system should be in place. If they tell you that when you are going to keep it forever, like if any abnormal take, then we have to photocopy and store them indefinitely. So for which patients we are going to keep them forever, like if something occurred which caused like cerebral palsy or patient complained because they had a concern and it couldn't be resolved, then we are going to keep that for indefinite period
Lifetime.
of time,
Different.
right? Because maybe they will come back, because the babies when they will be 21 and they want to sue us, they can always come back. So if you have a pathological CTG, which means that one abnormal feature was there or two suspicious features were there, then you will say that this is pathological CTG. Can be two abnormal factors and one suspicious, but these three concerns are there. So first you will do the fetal scalp stimulation test. You will just rub the fingers of the head, your fingers on the, you will just massage gently the head of the baby, and if it will result in rise of the fetal heart rate, then we will say that the baby is fine. Then if the baby is not responding to this one, then we can use the vibroacoustic stimulation test. Then like pen-like device, we will touch the head of the baby, and if they are stimulated, heart rate rises, well and good. Otherwise, you will have to go for the fetal blood sampling. For fetal blood sampling, there are certain prerequisites, like we can do it. It is generally safe, but when we should not be doing it. So if there are some concerns, then we should not be doing it. Like there is acute event, for example, cord prolapse, there is fetal bleeding disorder, increased risk of maternal-fetal transmission of HIV or the herpes. Or if the woman is with sepsis or she has like a thick meconium, then fetal blood sampling, it may be falsely reassuring like that. So that's why it should not be done. Otherwise, fetal blood sampling, it can be done. So if you have already a clear incidence that the baby is compromised, then we should not be wasting time. Then we should be rushing the baby to the OR. In the single breast transfers, they can ask you these two questions. Either they can give you the pH of the head and scalp blood, or they can give you the lactate level. Both are equally good, but we are more familiar with the pH type thing, so we stick to that. But you should know about the lactate levels also. So what are the normal levels? pH should be 7.25 or more, and the lactate should be 4.1 millimoles per liter or less, because the human being's pH, that is basic, it's not acidic, right? In the acidic environment, all your proteins are going to be denatured. That is the point. So that is the normal is 7.25 pH, or lactate should be 4.1 or less. In the borderline, the pH is going to be 7.21 to 7.24, and the lactate is going to be 4.2 to 4.8. And what will be the abnormal finding? If the pH is scalp pH is less than 7.2, or the lactate is more than 4.9. pH is going to decrease and the LH is going to increase as the degree of abnormality will increase. If the result was borderline and no accelerations with fetal scalp stimulation, then we are going to repeat no more than 30 minutes later. If result was normal and no acceleration with fetal scalp stimulation, then we will repeat no more than 1 hour later. If we need to think about the third fetal blood sampling, it means we need to involve the consultant, because it means that baby is not improving, so the consultant is going to tell us that will it be wise to continue giving them the chance, or we should go for just delivery. That is the point. Okay, so we are going to do an intervention if it is safe. If we can wait, we can do, otherwise we will just take the action. So what should be the examination and the care in the first stage of labor? PV every 4 hours. We need to start the partogram 1-to-1 sport. Don't touch the patient if progressing normally. No early amniotomy or oxytocin routinely used, and if there is delay like less than 2 centimeter dilatation in the 4 hours, then we have to consider amniotomy. But before we go for amniotomy, we need to tell the patient that since this water cushion will be lost, so her contractions are going to be more painful. Okay, that is one thing. So repeat PV after 2 hours if less than 1 centimeter, so confirm delay. So this is important point. I have also seen that one in the SVAs, that the membranes have ruptured. So what time we are going to examine? So if the membranes have ruptured, then you can see the VE, you can do the VE after 2 hours. 2
2
hours,
hours.
okay?
Yeah.
So, and why you will do the VE? Because the dilatation is less than 1 centimeter. Okay, then repeat PV 2 hours, and if less than 1 centimeter dilatation, so it means that the delay has been confirmed. So after amniotomy, consider oxytocin. Then repeat the VE 4 hourly. If progress less than 2 centimeter, then we have to consider cesarean section. Everything here in this slide is all
Can
about the
I
questions.
ask?
Sure.
Yeah. Can
Yes.
I?
Like if the membranes are intact, then you are going to do VE every 4 hours. But once the membranes are open and you have any concern, then you need to do VE after 2 hours. That is
And after 2 hours, if it's still 1 centimeter,
yeah, less than
it's
1
confirmed
centimeter.
delay.
Yeah, less than 1 centimeter confirmed delay. So you are going to do it like that.
Start the symptom. Okay.
Yeah, and start the
Oxytocin.
syntocinon. Then you should remember one thing. You don't start the syntocinon immediately after ARM. Then we'll be precipitating fetal distress. So if you have done ARM, you have done amniotomy or SROM has occurred, wait for 1 hour. After 1 hour, reassess. If things are fine, then you are going to start oxytocin, okay? Oxytocin is the more proper word. Oxytocin is one of the most
Yeah.
widely abused drugs, and that too without any benefit. Because the TOG article which we are referring to, it said that if we are using oxytocin inappropriately, it is going to cause more harm, like it is going to cause contractions without progress, and the chances of fetal distress will increase. And the benefit is that it is going to decrease the duration of labor by 1 hour. So oxytocin has to be started only on the orders of a consultant. No one else can now ask you to start it. I know the reg they can start, but they have some agreement with the consultant that if the need arises, we will start. But as per the guideline, we have to start this Synto on the order of the consultant like that. So then second stage of labor. In the primary gravida, it is going to be like 3 hours, like 1 hour passive and 2 hours active pushing. This is for a nulliparous woman. Suspect delay if the progress is inadequate after 1 hour of active second stage. Offer vaginal examination and then offer amniotomy if the membranes are intact. For a multigravida, 2 hours, like you are going to give her 2 hours, 1 hour passive and 1 hour active pushing. This is in the second stage, like full dilatation till the baby will be delivered. For a multiparous woman, suspect delay if the progress is inadequate after 30 minutes of active second stage. Okay, so you will suspect delay in the nulliparous after 1 hour, but in the multi, you will suspect delay after 1 hour, after 30 minutes. Even if she is para 1, but this delay will be abnormal, so you are going to suspect a delay. Offer VE and then offer amniotomy if the membranes are intact. No routine episiotomy, no perineal massage, no and hands-on support will be given. If episiotomy needed, then should be 45 to 60 degree from the midline. That is, and this angulation you are going to check in the full contraction. Water birth, we have insufficient evidence. So if the patient, that's why we are taking consent from the patient if she is willing to accept the risk, because we won't be able to monitor the baby extensively if she is birthing into the water, laboring into the
Yeah.
water. So if
But previously we said we can give 4 hours
yeah,
for any
here
parity.
here we didn't mention any epidural, okay? So when we will use the epidural, then it will change. We are going to that point, don't worry. So this is in the absence of any epidural.
Epidural,
So
okay.
yeah, so if full dilatation of the cervix has been confirmed in a woman without regional analgesia, but she doesn't get an urge to push, then we need to carry out further assessment after 1 hour. If she received analgesia, then automatically we are going to add 1 hour, because epidural is going to prolong second stage of labor. Epidural has no effect on the first stage of labor, but the second stage of labor will be prolonged. So then let's say the baby is born, there can be like many abnormalities which we need to talk about. So then the third stage of labor. We said that from delivery of baby to the delivery of placenta, that is called the third stage of labor. So we need to counsel the patient about the management. We should convince them that they should go for active management. So, but if they want to have physiological one, then we are going to give them the right to choose, and then we are going to give them full information. So there are certain differences between the active management of third stage of labor and the passive management, physiological management of the second stage of labor. Active management, it lasts maximum 30 minutes and we need to give 10 international units intramuscularly. So active management of third stage of labor involves using uterotonic drugs, then deferred clamping and cutting of the cord, and after administering oxytocin, clamp and cut the cord. So first you are going to give oxytocin and then we are going to clamp and cut the cord. Then don't clamp the cord earlier than 1 minute from the birth of baby unless there is a concern about the integrity of the cord or the baby has a heart rate below 60 beats per minute and that is not getting any faster. So it can affect the bonding. So we will have to pay attention to the baby. So we will have to cut the cord and give the baby to the pediatrician for the needful. So clamp the cord before 5 minutes in order to perform a controlled contraction as part of the active management. If the woman requests that the cord clamped and cut later than 5 minutes, then you are going to support her in her choice. And CCT, like controlled contraction, it should be done after signs of the placental separation. So what are the signs of placental separation then?
Elongation of the cord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and bleeding. We can see some
lengthening of the cord,
length.
gush
Yeah.
of blood, okay, and the rise of the fundus because the uterus will become like globular. All of these are the signs of the separation of placenta. Okay. So in the physiological management, what happens? Like it can last up to 60 minutes. If it will continue beyond 60 minutes, then it is going to be abnormal. It doesn't involve using uterotonic drugs. No cord clamping until the placenta pulsations they cease. And delivery of the placenta by the maternal effort. Like we are not going to push, the mother is going to push them. They also like to have comparison of the active and physiological stage of management. In active phase, your patient due to the uterotonics, they can have nausea and vomiting. The incidence is 100 in 1000. In physiological, it is 50 in 1000 because the patient has not received any drugs. Hemorrhage of more than 1 liter, the incidence with active management 1.13 out of 1000. And the physiological, it is going to be 29 out of 1000. Chance of blood transfusion with the active management for 14 in 1000, and in the physiological management it is going to be 40 in 1000. So it has increased. The risk of blood transfusion with the physiological management increases 3 times. This table should be on your fingertips because they are going to ask you several questions around it. That is the point. Okay. So any confusion,
Okay.
anything so far?
No, it's clear so far.
It's clear like that. Okay. So just a quick recap. These are the normal features 110 to 160, and it will be like the variability. It will be reduced like less than 5 beats per minute, non-reassuring after 30 minutes. And if it continues through 50 minutes, it will become abnormal. You know, the variability reduced. If it is reduced like less than 5 beats at till 30 minutes, non-reassuring. Goes beyond 50 minutes, then it is going to be abnormal. Just pay attention to this one. This is going to be abnormal after 50 minutes. If the variability is more than 25 beats, it will become non-reassuring after 15 minutes and it will become abnormal after 25 minutes. These are very important points, okay? And fetal heart rate accelerations are reassuring. Decelerations, we already know about them, like if they are classed as with or without concerning characteristics. If there are no concerning characteristics, like they are not reassuring after 90 minutes. But after 90 minutes, they will not be abnormal. They will be suspicious, non-reassuring, they will not be abnormal. If they persist, like decelerations, if they persist after 90 minutes. But if there are concerning features, like there are maternal risk factors and there are fetal risk factors and then there are decelerations, so it means that less than 50% normal range after not reassuring after 30 minutes. If the patient has some risk factors, then they will become like non-reassuring after 30 minutes. And if there are like more than 50% decelerations, like they are decreasing and they are non-reassuring up to 30 minutes, like that, okay? So if they last for 30 minutes, they are going to be non-reassuring if there are risk factors. Actions, we already know that we will do this fetal scalp stimulation, and if no response, then go for fetal blood sampling. If they give you in the question a place where you cannot do any, don't have the facility to do fetal blood sampling, then what will you like to do? Deliver, right? So think about the adverse outcomes, okay? Think about the adverse outcomes and you will go for the proper action like that. Just take action and go like that, okay? So you cannot do this fetal blood sampling, you need to deliver that patient within 30 minutes and you can deliver that with category 1 cesarean section, or if the delivery is imminent, like there is fetal distress but the patient is already fully dilated and the head is low at the perineum or plus station. You know that when head should be +2 or more, then we want to apply the instruments. So in the view of the fetal distress, which instrument you will like to use? Ventouse or forceps?
Forceps.
Yeah, why?
In case of emergency, like if there is bradycardia or prolonged decel, then it's forceps to expedite the delivery.
We will not use. Why we will not use ventouse then?
Because the ventouse, the failure rate is high with the ventouse.
Failure rate is high.
And you want to expedite, and you want to expedite delivery.
And we want expedited birth, otherwise we should take the baby for cesarean section, mother for cesarean section.
Yeah.
So we will talk about these things in detail when we will do the assisted vaginal birth. But if the fetal head is at 0, between 0 to 1, you should not offer instrumental delivery. If it is between 1 to 2, then you should take the patient to the OR because maybe she will need some rotational delivery. If it is at +2 or +3, only then you can do this intervention in the normal labor ward. That is one thing, okay? So here is the comparison of all of these things. And then what are the chances of nausea, vomiting, and how much time they can take. All of these things should be on your fingertips. Here is a comparison of the stages of a labor, and here is a comparison of active and passive management. So all of this is available in your notes. So make it a point to go over there and revise it, okay? So now a couple of questions, like you will be having your proper test on the labor also. So you want to see a 24-year-old patient who is currently in labor but is failing to progress. Fetal blood sample is sent for analysis. pH is 7.18. So which of the following is the appropriate course of action? You should take no action. Then you should consider delivery, repeat in 30 minutes, repeat in 30 minutes if CTG remains abnormal, and then repeat in 1 hour if CTG remains abnormal. So what will you like to do? Because this one is significant. It is below 7.2.
Sorry, it was muted. I said it because the pH is severe. I will consider delivery.
Yeah. So you are going to consider delivery. Because fetal blood sampling done, pH is less than or equal to 7.2, that is abnormal, and delivery should be considered.
Yeah.
Now another question, that you are called to delivery suite as the midwife is concerned about CTG changes and she suggests a fetal blood sample. So you should inspect the cervix. At what dilatation you should not perform the fetal blood sample. If she is less than 2 centimeter, less than 3, or less than 4, less than 5, or less than 6 centimeter.
Maybe less than 4 centimeter.
Let's
But
see.
she will not be inactive. Okay.
Less than
Less
3
than
centimeter, don't do anything. And cervix should be more than 3 centimeter dilated to perform the fetal blood sampling. Less than this one, they ask you what will you like to do for the patient now. Your answer is that you will like to take her to the OR, like that. Okay, so this one is pretty simple, that you are doing the CTG analysis. So which fetal heart rate is considered the normal baseline heart rate?
Yeah, so it's from 110 to 160.
Yeah, 110 to 160, that is the point. Because in the stress of exam, many students, they forget even the very basic thing. That's why asking you. Okay, now the 25-year-old woman, and again she was not progressing well. So you did this pH, which is, you did this fetal blood sampling, and it is 7.2. So what is the next best step in heart management? No further action. Repeat FBS in 30 minutes. Consider patient for C-section delivery. Then repeat FBS in 30 minutes if CTG remains abnormal, or repeat fetal blood sampling in 60 minutes if CTG remains normal. So what will you like to do for this patient?
So no further action required is not correct. Repeat FBS in 30 minutes. It's right, but it's not complete. Consent patient for cesarean section. This is no. Repeat FBS in 30 minutes if CTG remain abnormal. That's right. And I'll choose this one. Repeat FBS in 60 minutes if CTG remain abnormal. 30 minutes.
Okay. So repeat FBS in 60 minutes if CTG remains abnormal. Like that, okay? Because it is at 7.2, it is not less than 7.2. That's why the number is very, very important. Less than 7.2, you will do 30 minutes. 7.2, you are going to repeat 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Okay? That is the point.
So even if it's moderate, then we repeat it in 1 hour.
Yeah, then we are repeating it in 1 hour, like that. That is the point. So you are called to see a 32-year-old patient who is currently in labor but is fearing two problems. A fetal blood sample is sent for analysis. pH is 7.23. So which of the following is the appropriate course of action? No, for again all the similar 5 options.
Yes, yeah. So 7.23 is almost like, it's the moderate, then it will be repeat in 60 minutes. Yeah.
Repeat in 30 minutes if CTG remains abnormal.
Oh, could you go back? Why? It's 7.
Actually, it should be, I got it. It should be actually after 60 minutes, okay? And the previous one, this one should be after, it should be after, because this is 7.2, so this one should be done after 30 minutes, like that. Okay?
30 minutes, yes, yeah.
That is the point. That is the thing. Okay. Then what is the cause of variable decelerations? Uteroplacental insufficiency, cord compression, head compression, vasa previa, placenta previa. Variable deceleration.
Head compression, sorry. Yeah, variable.
Variable. So head or cord?
Cord compression, sorry, variable will be cord compression.
Yeah, cord compression. Okay, variable cord compression. Early, then
early is the head compression.
Yeah. So what is the cause of early deceleration? So we already talked about it. Head
Then,
compression.
yes, yeah.
Sometimes really they can bring very, very simple thing.
Mhm.
Then what is the cause of decelerations? Late decelerations.
This will be the uteroplacental insufficiency.
Yeah, uteroplacental insufficiency. Correct. So regarding CTG analysis is what is considered abnormal fetal heart rate.
More than 180.
If we will go by this standard, then less than 110 will also be abnormal, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. More than, now they're asking you which feature will be considered abnormal. Like, if the fetal heart rate is up to like this is 100, 100 to 180, that will be suspicious. But when it goes
Suspicious,
to
yeah.
more than 180, that will be abnormal. If it will be
Yeah.
less than 110, it will be suspicious. Okay, so that is the only
Suspicious.
feature.
Yeah.
More than 180,
Yeah.
that is the abnormal feature.
Yeah. And less than 100 is abnormal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
less than 100 is also abnormal. That is the point. So if you are asked to review your patient in the first stage of labor, as the midwife is concerned about her progress, this is her first pregnancy and she has dilated from 4 centimeter to 6 centimeter in 4 hours. At your initial assessment, she is 6 centimeter dilated with membranes intact, and you review her again 2 hours later, and the cervix is now 6.5 dilated and the membranes intact. So what is the next most appropriate action now? Now in 2 hours she has dilated just like 1 centimeter. So should we go for half centimeter, right? From 6 she became
Yes.
6.5. Should we
Yeah.
advise her?
So it's a delay. It's a delay in the first stage. So we'll advise amniotomy.
So you will advise amniotomy. Let's go there. So advise amniotomy. Why? Because in the first labor, if the first labor's delay is typically diagnosed if the cervical dilatation is less than 2 centimeter dilatation in 4 hours. So this patient progress at initially stated assessment is borderline. If delay is suspected, NICE guidance advises a woman should have a repeat vaginal examination 2 hours later, and delay should be diagnosed if there is less than 1 centimeter progress. In this case, it fits the first criteria of delay as she has only dilated like that. So by half centimeter, that is the point of it.
Yeah.
So when diagnosing a delay in the first stage of labor in the primary gravida patients, which of the following is suggested in the NICE? This is the definition of the delay in the labor. Cervical dilatation of less than 1 centimeter in 4 hours, or cervical dilatation of less than 1 centimeter in 2 hours, or cervical dilatation of less than 1 centimeter in 1 hour, or dilatation of less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours.
So it will be cervical dilatation of less than 1 centimeter in 2 hours.
Let's see. So cervical dilatation of less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours, because this is the definition given by the WHO also. Dilatation of less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours, you will say that this is diagnostic of delay. And explanation: diagnosing delay in the first stage of labor. Diagnosis of delay in the established first stage of labor needs to take into consideration all aspects of the progress in labor, and they should include cervical dilatation of less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours for the first labors like the primary gravida, and then cervical dilatation of less than 2 centimeter in 4 hours or slowing in the progress of the labor for the second or subsequent labor. So essentially the same definition, like less
Both of
than
them,
2
okay.
centimeter in 4 hours. So then we are going to diagnose delay like that. So that is all we have to say about the intrapartum care, NICE guideline on intrapartum care of healthy women.